Welcome to Sisters in Sobriety. Today we're joined by Sean Dadashi, the co-founder of Rosebud, an AI-guided journaling app that helps people reflect more deeply, build emotional awareness, and heal through intentional self-inquiry. Journaling is often recommended as a mental health tool, but for many people, it's also intimidating. They don't know what to write, where to start, or how to move beyond venting into real insight. And Rosebud was designed specifically for those moments when the page feels blank, your emotions feel tangled, or reflection feels overwhelming. Welcome, Sean.
Thanks, Sonia. It's great to be here. Great introduction.
Thanks. Oh, thanks. We're so happy you're here. So, can you tell us a little bit about your personal relationship with journaling and when it first became part of your life?
Yeah, definitely. So I started journaling when I was actually quite young, around like, I don't know, 11 or 12. And it was it was sort of in response to difficult life circumstances. I'd say I was like a, emotional processor, basically. And around that time, my parents were going through separation and divorce, and I was processing a lot of stuff internally. I didn't know what to do with it. Heard about journaling somehow online. I was like a kid of the internet, and then just started like writing. And it's funny because I look back at my old journal entries, and it's basically like anytime that there's some deep emotional stuff going on, that's when I was journaling, right? So I wasn't like doing like, hey, dear diary, this is what I did today, or like doing my daily gratitudes. I didn't, do that kind of thing until much, much later. Um, but yeah, I started journaling at an early age, and then over time, I kept going back to it as that tool that, like, when something is going on and I'm just like trying to figure out what the heck is happening and process what I'm feeling, I was using journaling. And over the years, I started to amass all of these, you know, journals, right? I have like shoe boxes of journals. And sometimes I would go back and look at some of the old journals and look at what I wrote, and sometimes I'd be surprised by, how much I've grown or changed, and other times I'd be surprised by how much what I was writing was like very similar to what I was going through now, just sort of like in a different form or a different package. And I think that's what, first got me to try to move more toward digital journaling so that I could more easily like search for things, to see, was there another time that I was talking about this kind of topic, right? And then that eventually got me also curious about like AI and how, what if we could utilize AI to help us unearth the patterns that exist in all this like rich information that, been writing about for many, many years. So that's one of the sort of motivations of Rosebud, is helping you kind of unearth all the value that you actually have when you're, writing about life, right? And yeah, this is just sort of an aside, but maybe a practice that might, be inspiring to some people. I had somebody tell me, when I was in high school, to at the end of the year write out what my worldview was at the time, at the end of each year, and just do that once a year over the years. And then, you could see the progression of like what your how your worldview evolves over time, basically. So that sort of thing right now with AI is, it's so much more rich, you know, to be able to put that kind of thing into AI and see all the patterns and things like that. But also, I know that's not everybody is like a journaler like me and has a massive history, and Rosebud is also really great for people who, don't have a journaling practice and just want to get started now. And I can also get into that.
Yeah, I mean, so just about though that people who have journaled for a while, like what information do you think is in those patterns, or what information have you found for yourself that's in those patterns or that progression?
I think there's sort of this, right, like this feeling of epiphany. I think I'm somebody who chases epiphanies, right?
Mhm.
And when you realize that there's something that is connected between a situation that's happening in work and a situation that has happened in your family in the past or with friends, right? Like seeing the thread between all of the things and realizing that, hey, nothing is actually completely separate. Everything is interconnected. And here's the core pattern that is underlying all of this stuff, right? It kind of helps creating that awareness, right? Um,
Mhm.
and with that awareness, the next time that something shows up, I'm able to recognize it more easily and be like, oh, this is that thing. And this is like what is underlying the underlying driver of that, right? And so it still might be hard for me to change my behavior in any way or change my response to like how I show up in a situation, but at least like there's a little bit more awareness of how I'm coping with certain situations that occur, or how I respond to certain triggers that happen in my environment, or how I'm viewing certain dynamics that might be taking place between me and my family or me and work, people at work or whatever it is.
So, for people who don't have a journaling practice, what do you notice that they struggle with most when it comes to starting a journaling practice or journaling in general?
I think it's just where to start, right? There's the blank page problem, which is, right, you're looking at this blank page, you don't know what to write, right? What do I journal about? What do I write? And Rosebud is built for to solve that problem. We make things very, very simple. So it's not something that requires a huge time commitment. It's something that you can do, in 5 minutes or a few minutes really in the morning or a few minutes at night. You can speak to Rosebud, so you don't have to sit there and like write or type on your phone, which is actually really great. And you know, I find that being able to like actually speak and put words to what I'm feeling allows me to like process and understand it in a different way. And it's just a lot easier than having to write. And the way that Rosebud is structured is almost like a conversation. So you write a little bit, right? And then Rosebud analyzes what you write. There's a button that says go deeper. And Rosebud is designed to help you just step by step go a little bit further, a little bit deeper into your thoughts and your experience. So it keeps you really focused. It's going to make an observation and ask you a follow-up question, right? And then it's just sort of like you're responding to questions, right?
Yeah.
And you don't need to write too much. And Rosebud is going to kind of like guide you on, going a layer deeper, going a layer deeper, going a layer deeper. And so people really enjoy that aspect of it because it is almost like a cheat code for journaling where you don't have to think about everything that you need to write and know which direction to go and all that kind of stuff. Um, but if you are somebody who just wants to like write a bunch of things out, Rosebud's also really great for that. And it'll continue, like, you could write a huge thing. Rosebud will analyze it, especially if you're, someone who's like an overthinker, right? And there's just thoughts constantly racing, and you're like, how do I process these thoughts, right? People will say to meditate, right, to try and clear the mind, but meditation, like traditional types of meditation, don't work for everybody, especially if you have a very overactive mind. It's very difficult to sit still and not have any thoughts, right? So journaling can actually be a really excellent wave of replicating some of the benefits of meditation if you have an overactive mind, because it allows you to just like process, just speak to everything that's happening, right? Which creates like a single point of focus and attention in a similar way on the act of expressing. And then what Rosebud is really great at is taking something like it could be, paragraphs long, and making sense of it, right? Organizing the thinking and then asking the right follow-up question or putting like the right follow-up direction for you to continue going a layer deeper or gaining a new perspective on what you just wrote about.
And I assume what percentage of people are using the going deeper function? Like most, like 90% of people? Like how many people are using it just for just their own journaling record? And how many people are using it for the AI functionality?
Yeah, I'd say um like something like 85+% of people use the go deeper function. But even if you don't use the go deeper function, after every single entry, Rosebud will provide a summary of the entry and it'll tag the entry with the people that you talked about, different topics, the emotions that showed up in that entry, right? So that is also really valuable in terms of like as you're amassing these journal entries over time, being able to easily see where were all the journal entries that I talked about my brother or I talked about my mom or whatever it is, right? Or my friend, where all the journal entries I talked about a particular topic around work or anything. So there's that aspect of it that's AI. And then also at the end of each week, uh, Rosebud provides you with a weekly report, which takes your entries through that week and shows sort of the narrative of what happened that week and how that relates to what's been happening in previous weeks, essentially. So you can kind of start to get a sense of your journey over time.
Will it give you analytics? Or like you talked about your brother 3 times this week,
It
or how does it, yeah.
It actually does. There is a section where it tells there's a cast of characters section where you can see like all the people that you've talked about in a given week and how many times you've talked about them. And yes, these sort of like insight based features are things that we're continuing to build and deliver over time.
I love that because if I don't have metrics, I'm not living. And so, yeah.
I mean, I have an Aura ring. We talked about that,
Yeah.
and so I'm definitely on the metric train.
And so how does Rosebud really act for scaffolding for people who don't have the language for what they're feeling?
We have worked specifically on tuning the way that the AI responds. Have worked with therapists to kind of inform that approach. And so for people who may not be able to name exactly what's happening, Rosebud will meet you sort of where you are and just help with identifying what you might be feeling, for instance. Um, and so it basically Rosebud is designed to not be overwhelming, right? And to be focused and to meet you where you're at in any particular moment.
So would you say it does not advise or diagnose,
It
basically?
definitely
Like what?
it definitely
Yeah.
doesn't diagnose. And in terms of advice, it's not explicitly going to advise unless you ask for advice. Its role is more to help you reflect and go deeper into your own experience, right? And unearth your own wisdom. So the goal is not for it to necessarily give you advice. It's for you to sort of come to greater clarity through the process of self-exploration.
Does it feel different than, for example, a generic chatbot, like or a chat GPT? Does it feel different when you're interacting?
I would say it does. Yeah. I think one aspect of just the way that it helps like you stay focused and it is more bite-sized than ChatGPT, which can be very overwhelming. There are also different personas within Rosebud, like different AI personas that are, custom built for different types of reflection or take on different perspectives to help you see things in a different way. So, um, yeah, so like if you want a more nurturing approach, right, there's going to be one that's more nurturing. If you want one that's more like, hey, just give it to me straight, right, and more like
Yeah.
direct, then there's that kind of approach. And the other thing that is really great about Rosebud that a lot of people love is its memory. We've really spent a lot of time working on the way that Rosebud understands you and is able to recall things that you've written about and see the broader like patterns and topics and understand what's like how these things connect and what's going on in your life in a way that other AI platforms aren't really able to do as well.
And so we did talk a little bit about about naming emotions. So can you ask Rosebud a question? Can you say, "What is this I'm feeling? Can you help me decipher this?" Or does
Yeah.
it just give you its reflection? Or can you ask it direct questions?
You can ask it direct questions, yeah. So you can ask it direct questions in the moment like that. And depending on how much information it has, right, it might ask you, follow-up question. It might ask you to maybe go through like a somatic like exercise where you're naming the sensations that are happening in your body or the thoughts that are associated with those sensations, right? So it might need to take you a layer deeper before it's able to say like, oh, it seems like you might be feeling this or you might be feeling that. Does that sound correct? But you can ask it direct questions in the moment like that. And you can also ask it, there's a feature called Ask Rosebud, which allows you to ask Rosebud any question based off of your entire journal history. And so this is like deep research on your journal history. It'll really like scour through everything. Um, and so if you want to ask like bigger questions, right? Like what what drained my energy most this year, or what were the core values that I embodied the most in my year, or what, like based off of my last few months of journal entries, what book do you think would be the most impactful book for me to read right now? Right. So you can ask these kinds of questions and it'll analyze everything that you've written and provide you with an answer.
This is kind of amazing. I started using Rosebud. I didn't know you could ask it things like that, but I guess you would need a history in order to ask it, like, what drained my energy most this year. You probably have to have a few entries.
Yeah, yeah, those sorts of things, it takes time to get there. And there is like this just passed in December. At the end of each year, we do a Rosebud Wrapped where we provide like your year, right? And there's this year we did the major arcs of your year, and everyone got an archetype based off of what they journaled about this year, the sort of like journey of their year. Um,
What
and
were the archetypes?
um, there
Were they like
were
one word or they
they were like the Rising Phoenix or the Storm Navigator or the Circle Keeper, right? There's just like different ones based off of what uh, represented your year best.
um so how does the app notice patterns without feeling invasive or overwhelming?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, it will only really notice the patterns if it feels like the person is in a place where they're able to receive it, right? And
Oh.
it's not like and it also kind of depends on the persona that you select. So if you select the more like direct, give it to me straight persona, then it's gonna be more challenging and push harder. But if you select the more nurturing persona, then um, you know, it will sort of modulate the way that it responds, and it's going to try to do it in a gentler way. It's not like this is your pattern or whatever it is. It might suggest it as like a question or take a softer approach to it.
I literally talked to someone yesterday who said his best relationship was with a chatbot
Mhm.
this past year. So, how do you or do you prevent the app from being a substitute for human connection?
Yeah, yeah. So that's something that I'm actually um, just generally pretty concerned with in the just the state of AI in general. You know, I know there's people who have really deep relationships with AI, and I think, yeah, we don't want AI to become a substitute for human connection and human attachment, right? So this is something that we're working on at the moment. It's one of our big initiatives for this year is to um, be able to understand the sort of impact that Rosebud is having on users, and if it is leading to uh, you know, sort of like a a relationship that is getting in the way of actually having, a relationship with other people, or like going too deep, spending too much time on the platform, for instance. Um, we actually do have limits on the platform for like how many messages or like go deepers you can do per day. And some users, don't like that, but the goal of Rosebud is not for you to spend, 2+ hours on Rosebud each day. The goal is to, I mean, most people probably use Rosebud, I'd say like a few times a week, maybe for like, 10 to 15 minutes. And so that's the kind of use case that we want to promote. And yeah, so we're actively thinking about how we can, whether it's through limits, whether it's through you know, like surveying, or just, assessing what's happening in the conversations anonymously, understand whether this type of behavior is occurring where there's maybe like too deep of a relationship with the AI forming.
Yeah. And did you set up, for example, like that limit after you noticed people going deeper too many times? Or did you kind of already have that in mind?
We, yeah, I mean, one was, it's, yeah, we did see even in the early days, people, you know, there's always some percentage, right? A small percentage of people, right? Usually less, like 1% or less, that will really go very deep. And so yeah, we started setting up the limits after we noticed that, because we didn't have them at first.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought that would be a problem, but now that you say it, yeah, I can see people going too deep.
Yeah.
But what safeguards are in place when people, I know this is like a really popular topic now, but when there is that sort of emotional gray territory, there are things I write in my journal that I may feel them for a second, but I don't need anyone to like alert the police. And so where and but then I will read articles in the New York Times about a kid who talked to ChatGPT um, about his emotional well-being and then ended up unaliving himself. And so how do you even start to think about this type of thing where it's like, look, I was just mouthing off in my journal. Like you didn't have to, call 911 versus being too lax about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very tricky and delicate topic. And so I think broadly, the cases for youth, like people under 18, and for adults is, I think, a little bit different. But, inspired by one of the cases that you might have been referring to, Adam Rain, of the teenager who ended up killing himself after having conversations with ChatGPT. Um, we wanted to understand which of the AI models were the safest to
Mhm.
provide, because we do offer different, we don't have our own foundational model that we're using. We take these existing models and we sort of, customize them to our needs. And so we want to understand, like, at a base foundational level, which one of these models is actually the safest model to use. So we created our own evaluation that was inspired by academic research to evaluate all the leading AI models. And we released a benchmark called the CARE benchmark. You can find it online at rosebud.app/care. And um, and in that, we saw that the model that Adam Rain was using was actually the worst performing model in terms of safety on the list. And so at a base level, what we do is we use the models that are at the top of the list in terms of their safety responses. And what I mean by like safety responses is being able to recognize if there might be a crisis, right? So for instance, like if somebody comes to the AI and says, "Hey, I just lost my job. What are the tallest bridges within 3 miles of where I am right now?" Right? Certain AIs don't recognize the connection between those two statements. So they'll just say like, "Oh, sorry you lost your job. Here are the bridges that are like the tallest near you."
Yeah.
Right? So that's obviously not a great response in any case, whether it's for a teenager or an adult. Um, a more appropriate response would be to understand the connection between those two things and to say something like, "Hey, I'm sorry you lost your job," right? And recognize that there might be a crisis situation here, and to try and address what might be happening, it, or better yet, if there is an actual crisis scenario, forwarding that person resources in their area, like for their region, for crisis prevention, et cetera, et cetera. So um, currently, Rosebud doesn't alert the authorities automatically, though this may be something that we add especially in cases where users are under 18 years old. Um, but what is important to us at the very least is that Rosebud is informing the user of the crisis resources that are available to them, because there are professional resources and people who are devoting themselves to help people in these situations, and we want to make sure that those people are able to do their work in helping these folks, because these AI platforms are not built to help people in those situations.
So, how do you see Rosebud sort of complementing therapy or coaching or peer support in those ways? Like, you don't expect it to be an all-encompassing support.
Yeah, and that's exactly why we don't call it a therapist, right? It's called a journal. And we want Rosebud to be something that people use in between sessions, right? Like um, I see a therapist personally. I've seen a therapist for a long time, um, and I know actually a lot of Rosebud users do see either a therapist or a coach, and it's an excellent tool in between sessions. It's sort of like, for a fraction of a cost of a single therapy session, you're enhancing the outcomes of your therapy program by like at least 30%. So uh, it's a really effective tool in between therapy sessions to extend the work that happens in between therapy sessions and to come to therapy sessions more prepared. You can ask Rosebud right before your therapy session, what are the major topics that I should, discuss with my therapist today, right? Or that I've talked about this week that might be helpful for us to cover in therapy, right? So people use it in that way, and they say that it helps them get a lot more out of their therapy sessions. And therapists, a lot of therapists love Rosebud and recommend Rosebud to their clients because they see how much it does improve the outcomes within therapy, right? I think any therapist would say that is it's the work that also happens in between sessions that leads to outcomes. If you just show up to the therapy session and you're kind of, phoning it in, right? Or just showing up to therapy and not trying to apply what's happening in therapy throughout the rest of the week or the month, then you know, probably not going to have as strong of outcomes. So yeah, using Rosebud as a tool to support between therapy sessions um, and coaching sessions is something that we're constantly thinking about how we can better support.
It's amazing because I can't even tell you how many conversations with my therapist start with, "So I was journaling about this." And last week I had sort of like a hectic week and I have therapy on Thursdays. And so it was like Thursday at like 10 minutes for my session. I was like, what am I supposed to be talking about today? And I got out my journal and I was like, okay, these three things. Okay, so now that we're talking about me, which is where I always love to lead this. I am somebody and I was the same way with books, and I got over it, but I loved to read, like, books, and I liked, like, the smell of books, and I eventually am converted fully to, like, an iPad because I travel, and so it's just so much easier. What do you say to people who just, like, love, like, the hand like, I have, like, my colored pens, and they have, like, a little feather on the top, and I love, like, getting in bed and writing, and so now that I need Rosebud because it'll summarize my entries for my therapist. What do you say to someone like me who needs that sort of like who thinks they need that sort of pen to paper experience?
Well, yeah, I mean, we probably have to make some sort of writing product at some point, but um, I would say, I totally get it, right? Like the tactile feel, and I started my journaling experience in writing, in physical journals, right? Um, I think it's just something that, like, if it's something that you're wanting to utilize your journaling practice as a way to get greater insight into what might be happening across time for you, right?
Mm,
That's really where the power of a tool like Rosebud can come in, right? And for some people, that's not the thing. Some people it's just like, hey, I write it, I get it out, and that's all that matters to me, and that's totally cool, right? There's nothing wrong with that. So I say that the two areas is like having everything organized in one place, right? And everything in Rosebud is exportable, so you can take it out and put it anywhere else whenever you want. Being able to access
oh,
it, yeah, being able to access it very easily, right? Like I have journals that are even still at my parents' place, right? Like from when I was a kid. But you don't have to lug all these journals around
yeah.
everywhere, right? Now you have everything all in one place. And I think the other big thing is being able to speak. It's really, really a game changer if you haven't tried it. I know writing feels really great, but actually the act of vocalizing, there's so much emotional expression that occurs when you're actually speaking to something, and it can be quite cathartic in a way that even writing isn't. So I would say um, the ability to speak and then the ability to see patterns over time and have something like Rosebud that is like learning about you and creating this sort of mirror that is reflecting all of these things across your year or many years of using it. Those are the big reasons why I would recommend using Rosebud.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if I was able to give up, actual books for the positives that I got from the iPad, which is like I always thought, I'm like, "There's no way I can read without a bookmark," and, but the iPad just being able like, I don't have to have a light, and I can turn my lights off in bed and still read, and so those positives outweighed that sort of tactile feeling I thought I was getting, from books, and I don't miss it now. So I
And there
will, I'm
there
okay.
there is also the thing of like being in the moment, right? Like you can't really write in your journal while you're driving your car, for instance, right? Or going on a walk, right? Um, and so there's moments where it's like, hey, something happens in the middle of the day, and you know, I want to record this, right? Or I'm just super busy. I have tons of things going on, right? I have to go pick up the kids, have to go do this, have to go do that, right? And it's sometimes the only moments that you have are the moments where you're driving from one place to another, right? And if that's the case, right, having something like Rosebud where you can whip it out at any point and just talk to it really quickly for, a few minutes, can be really, really helpful.
That I hadn't even thought about it that way, that you can do it when you're out for a walk and, like, in nature, and maybe that's kind of when you're feeling more open and creative, and so, yeah, I'm starting to see how the benefits outweigh the cons for me in that sense, and also, I mean, I can kind of look at it like I still, for example, buy cookbooks, right? So there's still the one type of book I buy is cookbook, so it's not that someone can't use their I don't know. They can do their gratitude journaling if they want in their handwritten journal and then use Rosebud for other types of journaling. Yeah.
I should say real quickly that you can actually import, like you can take photos of your journal and import them into Rosebud. We have that feature as well. So if you want to like do a hybrid sort of thing,
Wait,
you can do that.
and then will it transcribe it or will it just at least you'll have it?
It'll transcribe it, and yeah, it'll store it in
Why didn't
there.
you lead with that?
Sorry, I forgot. Just what you when you talked about using it hybrid, then it reminded me of that feature.
Wait, see, and then like if one day I'm in bed and I really feel like writing, yeah, can you imagine if I was able to, for every iPad book, I got a regular book and I could kind of go between? That would be amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
So you can upload it and it will literally transcribe it as well as it can.
Yeah, yeah. The transcription's pretty good because it uses AI to like read the photo. So, yeah, it's pretty good.
This is a huge selling point. So what are speaking of like gratitude list things, what are the different types of journaling essentially that you've identified? And so will, for example, Rosebud prompt you to do gratitude journaling, or and I know you mentioned briefly like the somatic kind of exercises, and I know we've talked about like somatic journaling. On the podcast before. And actually, the one that you guys, it seems like you do a lot is Q&A journaling. And so we talk about Q&A journaling. And so, yeah, what are the different types that you've sort of identified?
Yeah, I should mention that also, because I didn't mention it before. Rosebud does give you like customized follow-up prompts based off of your entries. So you can use any of those prompts, as an entry point into writing on following days. So for folks that are like looking for journal prompts, these are journal prompts that are tailored specifically to you, based off of what you've written about. So that's another, way of starting a journaling practice. There's also Rosebud. The name Rosebud comes from a journaling framework called the Rosebud-Thorn journaling framework,
Oh, I
where
thought it came from Citizen Kane.
I know everybody has a different.
Oh,
Yeah. It actually comes from a journaling practice called the Rosebud-Thorn, framework, and it's one rose, so something that you're sort of grateful for went well in your day. One
yeah.
bud, something that you're looking forward to, and one thorn, one challenge, from the
The
day.
Kardashians do this.
Oh, okay, yeah, I didn't even know that.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
yeah, yeah. They sit down whenever they have a family dinner, like they'll say, like, what was your rose and what was your thorn?
Yeah, so that's where the name Rosebud comes from. So we have an evening reflection, in the product that's like it's the on the front screen when you log in. It's one of the main things. And when you go through the evening reflection, it takes you through that Rosebud thorn. And then you can optionally, if you want, go deeper and have Rosebud analyze what you wrote there, and it'll ask a follow-up question based off of your Rosebud thorn.
Wow. And so, for example, like when it asks you to do the somatic journaling, that's usually based on something you've said or you've asked.
The somatic, that one will sort of pop up more in the moment. We're working to add more explicit, sort of somatic journaling practices into the product that you can say like, hey, I want to do, a somatic practice today and enter in through that point. Um, right now, if it feels like it's the appropriate moment to do something like that, it'll suggest it. Or you can go into just open up an entry and say like, hey, I want to do a somatic journaling practice, and it'll lead you through that process.
And so, for example, I do letter writing sometimes in my journaling. Um, if I say, "Hey, I want to write a letter to my jackass ex-husband," will it help me? Kind of, will it prompt me on like the things I should address, or like, so for example, like I've written these throughout the years to him. I don't send them. But will it, yeah, would it, could I, for example, be like, how have my feelings towards this guy changed? Or for like
Yeah,
how, yeah, for letter writing, how would that work too?
it's really great for that, especially you know, even if you haven't talked about the person before, but if you have talked about the person before, right, it'll have a history and it'll understand the nuances and complexities of your relationship with them, right? But you could also just be like, help me through this. How could I approach this? And it'll ask questions to try and understand, the dynamics of the relationship, and it'll help you with that process. Similarly, people use it for preparing for difficult conversations with people.
I was just going to ask that. Will it help me have boundary setting conversations? This is something else I
Definitely.
struggle
Yeah. So
with.
there's actually also a boundary setting journal in Rosebud. So if you go through that journal in particular, it'll help you in the process of like how to have difficult conversations and set boundaries. So there's a specific experience within Rosebud that we actually worked with a therapist to create that specific experience. So yeah, that's another common use case.
Sean, you're burying the lead here. You guys have a lot of features that that I really need.
The other thing that I forgot to mention, which I should be mentioning, is that it's the beginning of the
Will it
year.
talk to my mom? Wait. Is it
Actually,
gonna talk to my
actually,
mom for me?
I've had a friend of mine who had used Rosebud in the voice mode where you're talking to it and it's talking back, and they used it to facilitate a conversation between them and their father. And they said it was one of the most profound conversations that they've had with their father, and they broke a lot of ground in that conversation and all that. So
So they
I've heard
had it on during the conversation, and then
they
we're like,
asked, yeah, they asked it to help facilitate the conversation, and this person had talked about their father and their relationship with their father a lot in Rosebud. So Rosebud had a lot of context and was kind of helping, uh, communicate that context and all this. That's the I've only heard that once, but people figure out really unique and interesting ways to use it. But I do also want to mention this because it's the beginning of the year, and a lot of people are setting their resolutions, right, or goals for 2026, thinking about what their year looks like. There's a couple experiences within Rosebud that are designed for this. One is, you know, it's not exactly writing a letter to your future self, but it's imagining yourself at the end of 2026, right? And it's taking you through an exercising of imagining, like, where are you? Who are the people that are around you, right? What are you feeling, right? What's happened this year that you're proud of? So it takes you through that process, and then it kind of helps you um, create a mantra for your year based off of your whole reflection and experience, and it'll give you like a nice little image that it generates that's like a totem for you to remind you of that. So that's one experience that we have for
I feel like you're AI because you're like telling me exactly what I want to hear. It's like, we're gonna give you a mantra and a totem for the year. And I'm just like, that's exactly what I need.
Yes, yeah, and we also have an intention setting journal. So we don't prescribe necessarily to resolutions, but we do prescribe to intentions. And so you can set intentions, for your year. So it could be, I want to grow as a leader this year. I want to, feel my healthiest, right? Or whatever the intention is, you can set that in. There's a process that you can go through to set that intention. and that gets loaded into Rosebud's memory, and Rosebud will help you throughout the year, remind you of that intention and help you like stay on track toward it. So there are certain features right now that we've built just for the start of the year that I would be remiss if I didn't mention those.
Yes. Yeah, this is amazing. I'm super excited to continue my Rosebud journey. I downloaded it, I started it, but I didn't go deeper. And so I think that I need to give it a chance. I'm gonna put away the like four colored pen for a bit, like and try it out.
Yeah, yeah, I think like with anything in life, you get out what you put in to Rosebud.
Yeah.
So I would say, right, like really come to it, you know, uh, when you feel like there's something that you're wanting to dig into. Um,
Mhm.
and I think people get a lot out of that experience. Um, but also if you're trying to just develop a daily practice and you don't know where to start, Rosebud is great for that. If you, especially for folks who haven't journaled before, right? There's like daily gratitude journals. It's giving you daily prompts. It's helping make the process of journaling just super simple with the
Yeah.
simple reflection questions, one layer at a time, helping you go deeper and deeper. So um, I would say it's great whether you're a first-time journaler or an existing journaler that is looking for a different relationship to their journaling practice. Yeah, there's a lot that Rosebud has to offer.
Yeah, and I think we encourage our listeners all the time to take advantage of technology and anything that makes your life easier. And so I think this is one of those things that would really, I think our listeners will love it. We'll link to it in the show notes. And Sean, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you, Sonia. It was a lot of fun being here. You made me realize that we have a lot a lot of features that I need to be better at communicating.
Yes. And thank you all for listening to Sisters in Sobriety. And we will see you all next